From the Arizona Daily Star and Tucson.com, this is the Wildcast.
Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Wildcast podcast. I'm Justin Spears here with Michael Lev, getting you guys started this week. We're going to look back on Arizona's conference opening win against the Stanford Cardinal. Briefly look ahead to their insane matchup against arguably the best team in college football in Washington.
They might be.
Who comes in at number 7 in the country. Hey, 4 teams ranked in the top 10 from the Pac-12. That's never happened before.
I think I had 5 teams in there. I put Washington State 10th.
Wow.
And I had Utah 12th, so half the top 12. Utah's a weird case. I mean, we don't need to spend too much time on that, but they keep winning, keep barely winning. Their defense is elite. They can barely move the ball on offense. They don't have they're missing a lot of guys.
Yeah.
Not just Cam Rising. So it's kind of like if they faced a team like Washington, would they be able to slow them down enough to compete? I don't know.
Yeah.
But hey, credit where it's due. We've talked about it many times. We'll talk about it more, I'm sure, as the season goes on. But the Pac-12 decided to have its best year ever and its last year ever. So
it's amazing.
Yep.
We're also going to answer your mailbag questions later on in the podcast. Love doing those. One of my favorite things that we do here at the Star. So as always, pay attention for Lev's post in the middle of the week. You normally solicit questions when? Like Friday?
I should do it like Wednesday night, and then it gets to be Thursday night, and I'm like, oh crap, I forgot to do this, so I send it out Thursday night. But I really should. I'm going to try to do it on Wednesday evening on the regular, so be on the lookout for that.
And then I always put mine out on Sunday after the game. So between Lev and myself, we got a good collection of mail.
Yeah, I answer one question in my column that runs on Friday online and Saturday's paper, the Lev It on the Field column. And this week I combined I call it a question from my ex. I combined that with Threads. And Threads is about uniforms because the question was about uniforms. And I got to say, Justin, I didn't mind the way that the uniforms looked with the red stripes only on the sleeves. I didn't think about the fact that they'd have the blue numbers on top of the shoulders.
Yeah.
So I thought it was all right. I thought it looked pretty good.
I honestly, when I looked at him pretty closely, it looked like a little bit like the old 90s, early 2000s Arizona basketball shorts. The way that has that stripe on the bottom of it, those cat shorts.
Yep.
The Salim Stoudemire era, the Mike Bibby era, Miles Simon, like that era of Arizona basketball, the way those shorts were, that's how the stripes looked on the shoulders. And I'm like, I kind of dig it. I don't mind it at all. But a lot of Arizona football fans were not too happy about it. They said,
I think the picture didn't do it. The pictures that were posted on X/Twitter didn't do them justice because you couldn't see the full jersey.
Yeah.
I don't think, as I wrote in the column, I don't think they needed to change the uniforms. I thought they came pretty close to perfect last year.
Yeah.
But I don't know. They're always tinkering.
Yep.
It's still, hey, you know what? It's still better than the gradient. So progress.
No doubt. So, Lev, we saw Arizona beat Stanford 21-20. Plenty to take away from this game.
Oh yeah, interesting game in a lot of ways.
Where shall we start?
I think I know where we should start.
Quarterback
situation. I thought when Noah Fifita went into the game that the offense just looked different. It reminded me of when Jordan McLeod played, that one healthy stretch he had. I know he threw a bunch of picks against Oregon, but just the rhythm that the offense had, the timing, the pace, the tempo. It was like, okay, this guy's just out here distributing the ball. He's playing point guard. He can move around a little bit. We've made the Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook analogy how many times on this podcast?
Lot.
A million, right? I think Noah Fifita's got some Chris Paul type tendencies just in terms of his style of play.
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to try to do too much. He's going to execute the plays. He seems like he has a good feel for the game.
Yeah.
I thought, that one, I think the first completion to Cowing, the one to the near side, there was a blitzer coming right in his face.
Mm-hmm.
And he just fired the ball on time, on target. He had one zone read play on the previous possession and made the right read. pulled and ran and slid. Look, it's a small sample size. We do not know the status of Jayden de Laura for the Washington game. We were recording this before Jedd Fisch's Monday afternoon press briefing. But I feel like Noah deserves a chance to play. Let's see what he can do. At best, Jayden's going to be he's going to be compromised this week, and he relies a lot on his mobility. Yeah. If you take that away from him, I mean, who knows? Maybe he'd be more effective because he wouldn't have it as an option. But what did you when Noah came in? What did you see as far as contrasting the two?
And that's the thing that's unique about this whole situation is Jayden makes that one play where you're like, holy crap, look at that throw. That throw to T-Mac was spectacular. The throw to Tanner McLaughlin on that Kyle Shanahan-esque play up the seam, like that was a good play call by Jedd Fisch. But also, Jayden makes good plays, but he also makes a lot of bad plays too, or some plays that kind of make you scratch your head. And I didn't think that the pass rush was that good for Stanford. As a matter of fact, Pro Football Focus gave Arizona's offensive line a really good pass coverage grade, probably the best of the season if I'm not mistaken, or one of the best. Jayden had all sorts of time. And yet, for some reason, the passing game just wasn't clicking on Saturday against Stanford, which is very concerning because this was a team that got boat raced by USC, that lost to Sacramento State. Its only win of the season was against Hawaii, which is probably, you can make a case, the worst team in FBS right now. Like, they are very bad. So for Arizona to go up to Stanford and look like that offensively, there's no excuse for it other than you're just playing bad. Jayden de Laura played bad on Saturday. And I think that he's also had a lot of good moments, but the interceptions against Mississippi State, not really getting into a rhythm against Stanford, this is concerning when you're in year two. Last year, you could make an excuse. This year, there's no excuse for it. And then when Noah Fafita got in the game, right off the bat, what happened? 15-yard completion to, I think it was Montana Lamonia's Craig. And then the 9-yard run by Jonah Coleman, where Stanford did a really good job of disrupting the play initially, but Jonah Coleman redirected himself.
That was a great run.
Went to the left. And what's Noah Fafita doing? He's the lead blocker. He's throwing a shoulder into a guy, getting Jonah Coleman those extra 3 to 4 yards. So that right there is why Noah Fafita came to Arizona, why the Wildcats wanted to bring him in. He's, as I call, fun-sized. He's not the tallest quarterback in the world, but he makes all the right plays. And in the small bits that we've seen of Noah Fafita, is he going to give you the exciting, like, oh my gosh, play like a Jayden de Laura? No, but the man is very consistent, and the man is sound, and you know what you're going to get out of Noah Fafita game in and game out.
I mean, we don't know what he can do for a whole game because we've never seen him play a whole game.
I mean, we saw him at Servite a little bit, but that was also high
the
school.
game we saw, their offensive line got destroyed in that game, and they really struggled. But so here, I think there's a stat here in PFF's metrics that kind of illustrates what the difference was. And, we've previously talked about TWP, right? Turnover-worthy plays. Today I'm going to talk about TTT, which is time to throw. And this is not the amount of time that the quarterback has to throw. It's the amount of time the quarterback takes to throw, right? From the time he receives the snap to getting the ball out of his hand, okay? For Jayden de Laura, it was 3.69 seconds. For Noah Fafita, granted fewer number of snaps, it was 2.56 seconds.
Wow.
So the ball is getting out of his hand a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at season numbers for that particular statistic, I mean, Jayden is up there among the highest TTTs in the country. At over 3 seconds. Because I think a lot of it is because he runs around and he creates plays. And and like you said, sometimes it's amazing, but it was strange to watch, at least from the TV vantage point on Saturday, because it's like you go back to pass and then they just hold the ball, wait, like, were guys not open? Was he not seeing that they were open? And he also, Yogi made this point, and I'm sure Jed will talk about this today. He kept drifting back. Like
Getting
he would
too
take,
deep into the pocket.
like drifting, like his fundamentals were, it was weird. It was very strange. And like you said, not a good pass defense.
Yeah.
Not a good team, not a good pass defense. Like one of the worst. They were the worst pass defense in terms of yards allowed, yards average per play, completion percentage. The worst in the Pac-12 entering that game. And Jaden was barely over 50%.
Yeah.
Now look, hey, I don't like to blame everything on one player.
Yeah.
Okay? It's not, usually there's more than one guy or one thing that's causing plays to break down. However,
because offensive line in the first half, run blocking was a little shaky at times.
yeah, pass blocking was good though.
Yeah.
It was good. But we can all agree the quarterback is the most important player in football, certainly the most important player on offense, so that's where the focus is going to go. So, I don't know, it might be an easy decision for Jed this week if Jaden has a bad ankle sprain and can't play. You know, the decision might be made for him. If it's like 50-50 down to the wire, I don't know how you play it. Like, what if he can't practice all week, but he's 85-90% Saturday night? What would you do?
But see, that's where it kind of gets tricky, or it makes it interesting, because wasn't Bill Norton, he was banged up with a shoulder injury and didn't really practice this week. And Jed said in the post-game press conference, oh, Bill, the only reason why he played PAT and not defense was he didn't practice. So if you don't practice Jaden, how could you throw him in there?
I mean, you could say he's practiced all season, but not, this particular game plan, this particular week. I mean, again, we're just speaking in hypotheticals here. The news might change by the time this podcast comes out. Yeah. But it might, like I said, if the decision's made for him, it might be like a nice opportunity to see what you've got with the other guy. Granted,
what happens if the other guy does so well where you're like, holy crap, we gotta.
Well, he's playing really well. We're gonna roll with it. Okay.
Man.
I mean, wouldn't be the first time something like that's happened.
Yeah. This is a very tough situation for Jed, because when that happens, Lev, you've completely lost Jaden DeLora. No, I mean, we'll see what happens, because anything can happen. I mean, we've seen in what was it, Alabama's case, when Tua Tagovailoa took over for Jalen Hurts, and then later on in the season, Jalen Hurts stepped into a game and helped Alabama win. I don't know. That could happen, but I feel like Noah Fafita is the future. And when you officially make that decision with the current right now with Jaden DeLora this season, I feel like Jaden's time here is done, and you've completely lost him for the rest of the season.
Well, I mean, look, speaking of Alabama, I mean, they benched Jalen Milroe for a whole game, and then they brought him back the following week.
Sure.
And he helped them beat Ole Miss. So it's not that impressive. And I think it's easier in a way if he's injured. If he's legit injured and he can't play for 2 or 3 weeks, see what you've got. And then, hey, you know what? All right, again, these are total hypotheticals, but they've got 3 weeks of games, really tough stretch, the toughest stretch of the season by far. Washington, at USC, at Washington State. Then they have a bye week. So again, hypothetically, let's say it's a high ankle sprain and he's out about 3 weeks. You got a 3-week trial, and then you've got a bye week to step back, assess, and figure it out.
Yeah.
It was really interesting to see the contrast. It was sort of like, are they running different plays? Are they running the same plays? Like, how come all of a sudden, it's like there's a rhythm to it. There was the only rhythm they had really on offense was that one series in the second quarter when they did a couple RPO passes, a little slant, little quick hook, and then the double fake bubble play up the seam to Tanner McLaughlin, which worked really well. They did score in the third quarter with Jaden as the quarterback, using the RPO game to their advantage.
Levidamus.
Yeah, I may or may not have called pulling the ball out and walking into the end zone. But
it's like, man, if Jaden pulls on one of these RPOs, he's gonna score. And then 2 minutes later,
yeah. So it wasn't just Noah coming off the bench in that game. It was Jonah Coleman. It was DJ Williams. It was Daniel Haimuli subbing for Justin Flo. It was different guys at defensive tackle. What do you think about just in general the performance of all those backups in a tough game?
It was a big day for the backups. I mean, with Michael Wiley going out and Jonah Coleman stepping up and having a big second half, it was an important game for him because he's from Stockton. And so being a NorCal native coming back home meant a lot to him. Obviously, Noah Fafita. I mean, this right there, that game against Stanford showed the depth that Arizona has. And if guys go down, you really shouldn't have to be too concerned with Arizona. If this was the team a year ago or heck, even the season prior, it was like any injury could just make the team fall apart. This year's Arizona team, they're very deep, especially on the defensive line. I mean, it seems like every single week we're seeing a new defensive lineman really step up, whether it's Tai Tauyuiagalelei, Bill Norton has had a major impact on the defensive line. This week we saw Taylor Upshaw get a couple of sacks and really show that, hey, this was the productive defensive end that they got from Michigan. So
heck, man, Jeremy Mercer came in there and had a big TFL.
Yeah.
It felt like in recent years, if there was like one significant injury, there was just sort of a sense of panic.
Yeah,
or
at
dread,
any position.
Yeah, or something like that. I was asked before the season, or maybe it was in week one, like who are the players that Arizona could least afford to lose? And I think I said Jaden, Jordan Morgan, and Ephesians Prysock were the three that I cited. I still think losing Jordan Morgan would be a big blow because he's just so good. Like, you saw we posted about Kuiper's big board having Jordan Morgan as the 22 overall player in next year's draft. That's a very encouraging sign. He's elite. I think Prysock is becoming one of the best corners in the conference. I think he would be hard to lose, but I kind of feel like Jacob Manu might be in that discussion for someone who'd be just really hard to replace.
Yeah, because
he brings so much, not only production, but like leadership, communication. You'd be asking, I mean, I guess they could, if both were healthy, play Haimuli and Flo together. Otherwise, you're looking at a true freshman.
Yeah.
Probably Tay Brown stepping into that role. And Manu did it last year, but he kind of has something special about him. So I think he'd be in that category of guys who would be difficult to replace.
I think that the defense overall, though, showed a lot of toughness, what Dan Campbell calls grit. And they have an identity. And that identity is, pun intended, swarming. They swarm to the ball. They do a lot of gang tackling. There's not a lot of multiple missed tackles on one play, right? There might be one.
That 45-yard run in the first quarter was a rare instance where like three guys missed.
Yeah.
But most of the time, no.
It might be one.
It might be one guy.
But then the guy, the ball carrier might run it 2 more yards, and then he's already met by 3 more players. That's a Dwayne Akina principle. We saw him in training camp getting the guys to swarm the ball, always attack the ball no matter what, play to the whistle. And that's one thing that Arizona has always done, and that's why guys like Jacob Manu has been able to get so many tackles because they're just running all over the field, going wherever the ball is. And so, and considering the adversity they faced, against Mississippi State, you had all the turnovers. Against Stanford, you had offense not getting into a rhythm, and plus you also had a bunch of injuries too. And the defense has stepped up. My jaw dropped to the floor when I saw the total points allowed through the first 4 games of the season.
Great stat.
64 this season. Last year, 136. Think about that difference right there. Points allowed, big plays, Arizona's defense. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I think they might be a little bit farther ahead than the offense this year.
Yeah, no.
Which is crazy considering where they were last year.
I know. Well, obviously a huge challenge coming up with Washington. I think Washington is a top 3 team in the country. I had them 3rd again in my AP poll. they are a whole different beast. I mean, they will challenge you vertically, unlike almost any other team in the country. Michael Penix has an ADOT, that's average depth of target, of 12.4 yards coming into this game. There are some lesser quarterbacks who have higher ADOTs, but there aren't a lot of quarterbacks who are as accurate as he is, as bold as he is. They've been just blitzing people. And we will talk about that game a lot more in our second podcast this week on Thursday.
Mailbag time.
Yeah.
Lev, let's start off with some of the mailbag questions you had left over from last week.
Yeah, okay. So this one, Brad Malone asks, or he writes, Cats win a road game, but there is little joy in Mudville. As Arizona fans, are we out of touch with reality, or is that just sports fans in general? Also, how would you compare the Arizona football fan base, this is for me, to the USC fan base during your time in LA? Thanks. I will leave the first one for you, just about the feelings of the fans coming out of this game, expectations, etc., and then I'll handle the second one, Justin.
So, yeah, I think that Arizona has to understand, or Arizona fans have to understand that Arizona might not make a bowl game this year. Like that is maybe a little bit of harsh pill to swallow for Arizona fans, considering it's year 3 of the Jet Fish era. You can really judge a guy or a coach by his team in year 3. But this is a unique circumstance because for some reason the Pac-12 is so loaded this year. And, games that we all thought were winnable for Arizona, like Washington State, who you just put in your top 10. Also, Colorado. Travis Hunter's probably going to be back by the time Arizona plays the Buffaloes. These are really good teams. And those, in my opinion, were 2 games that I thought Arizona was going to win. Now, I don't think so. I think that's more of a coin flip game, and I think Arizona will enter both of those games as underdogs.
I think UCLA and Oregon State here are winnable games. Let's say they win them both, and they got to find one more.
Yeah,
in that group. Not all of those teams are ranked. The 7 in a row thing is not it's not a thing at the moment. But they're all really good teams. UCLA, I think they dropped out of the top 25, but they're also first in the nation in yards allowed per play.
Yeah.
So they have a really good defense, a really talented quarterback, albeit a freshman. There's gonna no gimmies.
Yeah.
No gimmies on that schedule.
And so I just hope that you guys understand that Arizona has a really good football team. The Pac-12 is just better than advertised going into this year. So anyways, compare USC and U of A football fan bases.
Yeah, USC, there's obviously more of a tradition. I think that they have really high standards for success, and I didn't really appreciate that until I was on the beat. And I would, I'd see they get all these 4- and 5-star players every single year, and then they'd kind of underachieve. And that's why everyone was always mad at the coaches. What is wrong with you guys? You're recruiting these great players. Why aren't you better? Why aren't you winning, like Pete Carroll did in his heyday? I think there's a little bit more of a fair weather element to any sort of non-Laker, non-Dodger fans in Los Angeles in general, just because there is so much else to do, so many other interests, even other sports teams whose games you could attend, whereas Arizona is kind of the only game in town.
Yeah.
And the tailgating experience on a given fall Saturday is really special here. So I think those are some of the differences. Definitely going to be weird, Justin, when we go out there in a couple weeks, just knowing it's the last time.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Can we just get a do-over on this whole thing? Just
right.
Put the Pac-12 back together.
Is that possible?
Just change our minds. I don't think it's possible.
Oh, man.
No, look, 10 years from now, will people come to their senses? Will there be some sort of complete recalibration of the structure of college sports, and we will have the 128 team or the 64 team, semi-pro college football league, and then it's broken up by geography? Could happen, and then all the other sports are in their old traditional conferences.
Yeah, I like that.
It's possible.
Yeah.
So I would never rule out anything, but it's certainly not imminent.
All right, this question comes from Robbie Maines. Robbie, or I hope it's Maines or Manis. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that last name. Robbie asks, I find it really interesting how Noah can get through his progressions compared to JDL. It sure helps the offensive line out. It all goes back to the triple T stat that you mentioned. Jaden's holding onto the ball, and Noah isn't. Is that play calling?
He had four pass attempts. Okay, we don't know what happens over the course of a game, but in the small sample size that we saw, there was a difference. And I just want to know and we'll ask Jed about it, and I'm sure he'll have some analysis for us because he's really good at the X's and O's of offense. But like, what was causing that with Jaden in that game?
Yeah,
you know, I mean, the previous week they ran a lot of bubble screens, and that might have been a product of how UTEP was playing them. You know, like maybe giving them space on the outside. It looked like Stanford was pressing a lot with their coverage. I think they're kind of a traditional press man type of team, so maybe that wasn't available to them. But like, where's your plan B? Why was he holding the ball so long, so much?
Joseph52 asks, at this point in the year, I would expect our coaching staff to understand what our weaknesses are. Why does it seem our staff is overly hesitant to make any changes at all to fix those weaknesses? And he includes quarterback play, safety play, running speedy straight into tackles, etc. I would say, as far as quarterback play, I mean, Jayden de Laura is the franchise quarterback. He's been anointed the franchise quarterback ever since he transferred from Washington State and has showed that he's very capable of leading this team. I know that it seems like this past week is like, all right, let's all, jump on hating Jayden de Laura bandwagon right now, but Jayden has shown a lot of good as a quarterback. And I think that in terms of his playmaking ability, the way he's able to improvise, I consider him a quarterback that's in the top half of the Pac-12, or maybe. There's a lot of good quarterbacks in the league.
The league is so loaded. Well, let's do that exercise real quick, okay?
Okay.
Caleb Williams is ahead of him.
Oh, yeah.
Bo Nix is ahead of him.
Yes.
Michael Penix is ahead of him.
Yes.
I would say Shedeur Sanders
is
ahead of him.
Cameron
Ward is ahead of him. That's 5.
Cam Rising?
Yeah, healthy Cam Rising would be. I would not say DJ Younghoe is ahead of him. He's so inconsistent, and I joked. I stated to a friend of mine that I was messaging over the weekend that DJ Younghoe will have more success in MLB than he does in the NFL. Like, I still think there's a future for him as a pitcher, not necessarily as a quarterback. But who else? Definitely anyone ASU has, I'll take Jayden over that crew. Anyone Cal has, anyone Stanford has. Who else? Who are we leaving out? UCLA, I would say at this point,
better than Dante Moore.
Yeah, he's better than Dante Moore at this point. So that puts him 7th,
6 or 7. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just so deep.
It's a loaded room, loaded group, I would say. But he's still. If this was a Pac-12 season from a few seasons ago, we're considering Jayden de Laura in the top tier of Pac-12 quarterbacks. But I still think at this point, year 2, the inconsistent play, especially with the improved offensive line. I know that Raymond Polito is banged up, and we don't know his status for the remainder of the season or the next following weeks. I think that they're hopeful it's just going to be a minor ankle sprain, and he'll be back soon. But I think that with the improved offensive line, the younger guys like Wendell Moe and Josh Baker getting more experience and improved, and then you have a couple of first rounders on your at your tackle positions. Offensive line is really good. You have a top 2 receiving core in the Pac-12, top 3, right? I would say that Washington is probably number 1. I put Arizona right there at number 2. Jayden de Laura is driving a Ferrari right now. And I actually described it on the radio. It's like Jayden DeLora, from time to time, he'll wax the Ferrari, he'll clean it, he'll make it look nice. But every now and again, you'll notice there's a little like chip in the paint. There's a little like scuff in the rim. And I don't know how long you can allow Jayden DeLora to continue driving the Ferrari, because from time to time he gets a little reckless.
Yeah, I have one here from a Bear Down Beat MM. This was before the Stanford game, but I think it's an interesting question. This week is a must-win based on the 7 consecutive ranked opponents coming. Is this the most important game of the Fish era to date? My answer to that would be no. I would say that whatever game they won to break the losing streak would be more important. I would say that like the fact the UCLA game was that was kind of like, hey,
at the Rose Bowl,
that was putting them on the map type of win. I think that beating ASU was really important last year to finish that season 5-7 versus 4-8 to end a losing streak against your arch rival. I think that was a more important game than this last one. I mean, this game was important. Stanford game was important in the context of this season because of what we talked about, how hard it's going to be to make a bowl game, even though they're a better team than they were before.
So this, I'm going to parlay these two. This one comes from UA Kathmandu and Winston Dan. UA Kathmandu asks, been reported that JDL is an emotional player. How much do you think this settlement being tossed affected his play? How easy for Jed to play Fafita this week, regardless of true injury status, and say JDL is too injured to play in order to get a whole game look for Fafita? And then Winston Dan, along the same lines, I feel like the settlement news of JDL's court case might have played into his inconsistency this game. Will JDL get the offense clicking? The offense seems to have stalled after 2 years of JDL at quarterback. Honestly, I don't know if the settlement had anything to do with it. I just think that this is Jayden DeLora. This is the Jayden DeLora experience that we've seen for the last year and a half. A lot of good stuff, but he also makes some boneheaded plays. And there's times where Arizona just can't get into rhythm. We saw in the first quarter, once again, they can't seem to get a rhythm on offense. They're getting outscored 17-7 in the first quarter this year. They're outscoring opponents 35-9 in the second quarter. So they're doing insane stuff in the second quarter. Like, I compare it to like when you're playing Madden and then the other person you're playing with scores 2 touchdowns and you like sit up and readjust yourself. I feel like that's what Arizona does every time they get into the second quarter. But as far as Jayden DeLora's inconsistent play, I don't know if this has anything to do with settlement. It's
impossible to answer that question, to know if that was in any shape or form a distraction. I mean, it's only, I don't think we reported the story last week, but I don't think it happened last week. I think it happened a little bit earlier in the summer, so he probably knew about it for a while. Maybe the fact that it becomes public, creates some angst for him. But I tend to agree with you that he's an inconsistent player. Like, he's kind of all over the place sometimes, You just kind of never know what you're going to get from week to week. And I think the injury thing, I mentioned that earlier. It would be the easiest out for Jed if he can't move around and he's got a legit ankle sprain. You can play the other guy and see what happens.
Why do you think Arizona is struggling in the first quarter on offense this year? This is AZ Cat John's question.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe I believe that Jed does a script, right? I don't know how closely coaches stick to those scripts, but maybe teams have kind of like, maybe it needs to be freshened up a little bit, maybe he needs to kind of toss out like whatever his sort of initial instinct is and try to go a different direction. Maybe they need to run the ball more early.
Yeah.
Get that going. They ran the ball really well in the second half of that game, kind of controlled the line of scrimmage. I think they had 20 run attempts and 10 pass attempts in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
You could argue that would be a good way to attack Washington, to try to keep their offense off the field, but I don't know. They're so explosive. They can score so fast.
And that's why I'm concerned for Arizona, because I'm like, I think this game could turn into 10-0, 14-0. real quick.
Yeah. I think it's so important in a game like this to get off to a good start. You're going to have a sellout crowd. Give them something to get excited about, engaged in. If it's 14-0 after 5 minutes, then all the air comes out of that balloon.
Yep. Injury report. This is from Tyler Quillen, and he also asked, when does a certain safety get benched in favor of youth? The Gunnar Maldonado question.
Yeah, Gunnar had a good game against UTEP, and he reverted to form against Stanford. PFF had him with only one missed tackle. I can remember 2. He had one on that 45-yard run. He had one on that pass to the 5-yard line that was ruled down at the 1. He struggled in coverage. There was one that was even overturned by penalty, but it would have been a reception that he gave up. Okay, fine. Let's say you want to go to Genesis Smith. Is this the week to go to Genesis Smith against the Washington passing offense? And maybe you say, what do we have to lose? It can't get any worse than it's been with the struggles that Gunnar has had. But also, man, that's a tough assignment to throw a guy into,
As a true freshman.
I feel like last year, I'm not 100% sure if this was the case, but when they started playing all those young guys, was that after the bye week?
I believe so.
Last year? That's the time that you do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You have an extra week to prepare. I think they're going to ride it out until then, and then we might see someone like Genesis Smith play after the bye, which is after 3 more games.
Because I saw a handful of missed tackles against Stanford. I saw at least 3, honestly, Lev.
By him? Okay.
By him. And also the blown coverages. It felt like every single big passing play by Stanford, there was Gunnar Maldonado right there. The ball was getting thrown at him. So,
well, that's a concern too. That is a concern too. Are coaches looking at the film and being like, "This is the guy we're going to attack"? Yeah. I imagine that we'll see a lot of the dollar defense against Washington. What was interesting was Stanford. They were running against the dollar defense. A lot of times on 3rd and long, they were just like, we're just going to run our quarterback right up the middle.
Yeah.
When they started throwing, they had a lot more success. But that was an interesting twist to see how Stanford reacted to the dollar by running the ball against it. I don't think Washington's going to do that. Their bread and butter is Michael Penix and that trio of receivers that they have. They have a good tight end also. It's a tough attack. By PFF, they had Gunnar targeted 5 times, 4 receptions for 81 yards. They have some guys who struggled a bit in coverage. They had Takario giving up 3 catches on 4 targets. I think the difference, Manu had 5 targets and 5 receptions, but the yardage. The 5 catches against Manu, 45 yards. The 3 catches against Takario were 39 yards. The 4 catches against Gunnar were 81 yards. So it's big plays.
Yeah.
It's big plays. And that when you're a safety, those are generally the positions you're going to be in.
Any more questions for you, Lev?
I have one more. This is from Cat Bus AZ. This is a good one for you, Justin. What level of basketball-centric Arizona fan engagement will it take in football for you to feel that the program has quote-unquote arrived?
Basketball-centric?
Yeah,
like
Arizona
basketball?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's what he means. What would you need to see in terms of attendance or engagement, on a basketball type level to be like, okay, football's there. This isn't just a basketball town; it's a basketball/football town.
Competing for conference championships, because that's the one thing about Arizona basketball is that even though they may not go far in the tournament, or at least we haven't seen them have that magical run. I know 2022 they went to the Sweet 16 of Tommy Lloyd's first season, but even though that they haven't really done well in the tournament, they still go to the Pac-12 tournament and take over Las Vegas. And they also compete for conference championships. If they go to the Big 12 next year and obviously beyond, and they're one of the top teams in the Big 12 year in and year out, then yeah, I would say that Arizona football has arrived, especially when you're going up against schools that really value football like a TCU, like a Baylor, and even Utah. So
yeah, I would say a couple things to me. One, like selling out regularly would be a sign.
yeah,
Harder to do. I mean, there's more people to fill up the football stadium than there is the basketball arena. And then internally, if we got as many page views for our football stories as we get for our basketball stories, then maybe that would be a sign that people are all in. I think it's overall, it's just kind of like, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. If they keep bringing in great players, they keep improving, they're competitive, they're fun, that you will see a high level of engagement.
Yeah.
You know, basketball program wasn't always king around here, right? Before Loot, I mean, they had arguably more success in football than basketball, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, in the 90s, Arizona was going to Final Fours, and the football team was also on the Sports Illustrated cover. Like, the 90s was kind of like the golden era of Arizona athletics. And if Arizona wants to kind of get back to that, football's got to be one of the best in the country. And I think if they compete for conference championships, Big 12 championships, because I don't know if they're going to be competing for a conference championship this year. I think
real quick,
that's fair to say.
Real quick, looking around the Big 12, some of the high-profile programs are struggling right now. Oklahoma State is down.
Yeah.
Baylor's down. Texas Tech has been a disappointment. TCU obviously lost the opener to Colorado. They've kind of rebounded since, but Houston hasn't done that well. Cincinnati hasn't done that well. West Virginia's actually been okay, 3-1. Kansas has been kind of the story of the league so far. And people forget about BYU too, by the way. They're always tough, and they are always physical. I think going into next year, even without Cam Rising, Utah might be the favorite.
That's crazy.
You know, in the you know what? Actually, you know what? I take that back. Colorado might be the favorite.
Yeah.
I think all those guys can come back. I don't know if Shador's going to leave. Maybe he'll stick around because his dad is the coach. But I think pretty much like all the premier players that they brought in will be back, and they'll have another recruiting class.
They're going to wreak havoc in the portal. Again.
They'll wreak havoc in the portal. Colorado and Utah might be the co-favorites in the Big 12 next year. Isn't that crazy?
Also, I think Arizona's success, kind of like basketball, if they want to get to that level, will also be about guys that they bring in and turn into pro prospects. You know, so many NBA players came through Arizona, even with Miller. Like, how many one-and-dones, first-round picks does Sean Miller have? If Jed Fish can bring in several NFL draft picks, and not just like NFL draft picks, I'm talking about like day 1 or day 2 guys. And I'm not saying go full Georgia having 6 guys drafted in the first round, but every couple years you got a guy that goes in the first round, the second round. I think that'll show you where Arizona.
And what is that? And what impact does that have? We're talking about those guys all the time, right?
Yeah.
When Aaron Gordon was, playing an instrumental role for the Denver Nuggets winning the NBA championship, it's like, hey, look, there's Aaron Gordon. He played here. It kind of keeps it in the zeitgeist, right?
Yep.
And that's not the case on NFL Sundays.
No.
You know, there's like 3 players on active rosters.
Yeah.
I think that's going to change. These next 2 years are going to be really big. I think Jordan Morgan's going to be a first rounder. I think T-Mac's going to be a first rounder in 2025, and I think Jonas Savanea might be too. So
what's this season, since actual football season started? You wrote about Roy Lopez signing with the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And I wrote about Nick Folk winning AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. Outside of that, have you written anything NFL related?
No.
Neither.
I mean, I could, I guess. Gary Brightwell did play more in that Thursday game because Saquon Barkley was injured. But there's not a lot. Not a lot to write about when it comes to that. And I think that has like a feedback. It's like Looper, you know, like the more NFL players you produce, the more NFL caliber talent is going to want to play for your program.
Yep.
So you have to kickstart that somehow, some way. I think they're going to do it these next 2 drafts. Tanner McLaughlin, by the way, I think is an NFL player.
Another one.
Not going to be a first or second day pick, but I think he's an NFL player.
All right, and that'll do it for this episode of the Wildcast podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you get your podcast. Just search the Wildcast. leave us a 5-star rating and a review, and also download the Wildcaster mobile app today off the App Store and Google Play.